A student who's asking themselves at this point in 301 before they're in their upper divisions, should I go to grad school? Are there any things that they could do in these last few semesters at CSUN to kind of help them answer that question now?
Get into research, contact your favorite professor, or if you go on our website, there's descriptions, right, of the faculty research interests. Like, so if you click on CSUN faculty psychology and then you click on a professor, it'll have a short description of their research. So you can go stalk the faculty and figure out
Not
which...
literally.
Yes. Online. And,
this has happened to me before.
and then you find out which professors are doing stuff that looks cool, right? So if you have interest in sport or whatever area of psychology, you can go on there and find that area, and then go and meet with them and be like, hey, I'm interested in this kind of research, and then try to figure out if you can get some research experience. Because if you're going into grad school, whether it's a master's or PhD, you're probably going to be doing research in some form. So if you find out that you hate research, then maybe not. I was never the biggest fan of research. Mm-hmm. I do it and I enjoy it, but I didn't want to make it my career. So for me, like, getting research experience was one thing, but also it led me to other opportunities like teaching.
So one thing that most students have heard by this point is getting research experience, but I would really suggest looking at the interests that you have, that the students have, from different perspectives. And sometimes I felt I got that from volunteering in labs who were in different fields. So as an undergraduate, most of my lab experience was in the education department. So the education department is where I found that they were early on considering the role of technology and how that impacted learning. And I really wanted to see, well, how can we use research to impact people's lives? And, so see what's outside of psychology and see what aspects of that you can bring into your interest. And, even though you might have a specific interest, it might be in a different type of program that you hadn't considered outside of psychology.
First of all, make sure to give yourself enough time to take the exam before your applications are due, or even if you're not sure when you're applying, your scores are good for 5 years. So when you have a good time that you have time to study for it, that's a good time to take it. That way you can give yourself time to potentially take it again if you need to. But I would say don't go in with the attitude that you're going to need to take it again. You definitely want to prepare. It's, a waste of your time and money to go in there unprepared. So you do want to spend some time studying for the exam ahead of time. Studying specifically with materials from that test, right? It's a really different test from one you've taken before. It's not like a regular exam that you would take in one of your classes, so you really want to be familiar with exactly what that test is like and prepare for it specifically. A good time to prepare for it is maybe during the summer or another time when you don't have your other classes going on, so you can really focus on it. In the GRE, there's a couple of different sections, so there's verbal and there's math. For the verbal section, one thing you want to think about is studying a lot of vocabulary. Unfortunately, that's a big part of it. Do your best to memorize as many words as you can. It's one of those really rare times when quantity is more important than quality when studying vocab, because if you've at least familiarized yourself with a lot of words, then if you see them on the test, then it'll be helpful to you, even if you don't remember exactly what they all mean.
How did you go about memorizing words?
I had a list of words and definitions, and I had flashcards, and I literally just kept them with me at all times. So anytime I had spare time, I could just pull them out and study for, a little bit, like if I was on the bus, waiting in a waiting room somewhere. For math, one of the important things to think about is timing of the exam. So even though the math itself is not that challenging as far as what types of questions, it's geometry, it's challenging in that you haven't had this math in a long time, you haven't thought about it since high school, but it doesn't go through calculus or anything that you haven't learned yet. But the difficulty with the test is that it's a really short period of time in which you have to answer those questions. One mistake that some students make in preparing for the math section is to do all of their practice untimed and just try to learn how to solve all the problems, but then when they get to the test, they haven't practiced doing it really quickly. So it's important to maybe start out untimed and kind of remind yourself of the different formulas and things like that, but eventually you really want to spend a lot of time practicing within the time constraints to make sure that you can finish in that amount of time. And that really involves a lot more of practicing sort of problem solving and big picture solutions and kind of tricks, as opposed to just sitting there and doing long calculations over long time stretches.
Yeah, that's a good tip. I think somebody had told me that I should do at least 2 practice exams prior to going in and time them, and that does really make it real when you sit down and you pretend like you're in the test and here's time period and I have to get it done by then.
Definitely.
So one thing that I recommend for students who are trying to decide between going from, do I want to stop at my BA, or do I want to get a master's, or do I want to get a doctoral degree, I would say that they can stop temporarily at the BA level, work for a couple of years, get some more experience under their belt, and make sure that what they're planning to do for graduate school is the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
I personally did that. When I finished undergrad, I moved from North Carolina to Boston, and I got a job, and I worked in one job for 1 year, and then I got a kind of a promotion and moved to another job the second year. And in that second year, I was convinced of exactly what I wanted to do. And it's not terribly different from what I planned to do when I got out of my BA, but I knew once I applied for those graduate schools, and I got to choose between graduate schools, I knew which school was best for me. I knew which program was right for me because I had taken a little bit more time to mature, work in the working world, realize how little money I made, and desire, I had that much stronger desire to go back and get my master's degree and my PhD. So I would say that students can take that time off, and it's not a detriment. I talk to a lot of students who really feel like they shouldn't stop. Their families want them to continue going on, and my family did too. They hoped I would, but I was all the much more prepared for graduate school because I took a couple of years off, which is not off. I worked my tail off for 2 years, multiple jobs.
Yes.
So, being a first-generation university student and the only one in my family to get a doctorate degree has resulted in a lot of situations where I really have felt a little, disconnect from my family in terms of not knowing how to explain what I do to my family. So it doesn't stop after undergraduate. I'm still figuring out, well, how do I explain the type of work I do to my parents? They know I'm a professor, but they don't necessarily know the research I do. So that's a common experience I've found among first-generation students, but what really has helped me is to remember that they've been there to support me emotionally and give me the other emotional tools and social tools I need to survive, like grit and working hard. So one of my motivators has been family, so I would suggest keeping family close and keeping those connections that help you through the difficult times in applying to graduate school and being in graduate school.
If you are trying to decide between master's degree and PhD, I recommend to a lot of students to go ahead and get the master's degree. Sometimes you can get a working job out of a master's degree, and you have a much stronger resume after you've done some research, if you're going into clinical, done some clinical practice, you've done more hands-on work, you know more what you want and what you need from a graduate program and a PhD mentor. So it really, students, I think, from CSUN who are really well prepared with strong resumes and vitas after they finish a master's program get into PhD programs a lot more readily than a student who maybe is coming straight from a bachelor's degree.
A student comes to me and actually mentions an article that they read that either I wrote or someone in our research area wrote, and explains why that article was interesting to them and how that relates to them wanting to work in my lab. That would really show me that they're really interested in the area and that they're already taking steps towards learning more about the field that they're interested in getting into later as well.
Let's say a student tries to read an article and everything goes over their head, they have no idea how to consume it. Should they still come to talk to you?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't want that to, defer anyone from coming to talk to me, or I'm sure no other professors would want that either. If you have trouble, at least mention that you looked it up.
Yeah.
Just doing that shows that you're interested in the area again and doing something above and beyond what typically happens, what we typically see. Typically, sometimes students will just stop in during office hours and say, I'm interested in your research. Sometimes they'll email me and say that they're interested as well. And again, the more personalized that first point of contact is, the more likely I am to to want to talk to that student. And it doesn't mean that I don't want to talk to all the students. It just means that I might pay more attention to that because that student does seem to be showing that they're more interested in the area.
Right. I have sometimes a hard time connecting with students and seeing how they can benefit my lab if they come in asking to be a part of the research team just because they want research experience and not because they know anything about what I do. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one other thing that I think is important is to kind of look into research labs or professors you haven't had classes with yet, because a lot of times it's easy to contact a professor that you might have had in a class, but their research might not be interesting to you or just might not be the field that you're trying to move forward in. So it's perfectly fine to contact someone that you don't know. Professors expect that. It's not a problem, and you should really look on the website and see what labs are interesting to you before you decide where you might want to belong.
It's kind of nice if you are reaching out to a faculty member, let's say they reach out to you, for them to then move forward with trying to take a course from you.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that would make their time in the research lab even more meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things you want to try to do is be able to be in that research lab for some period of time, and I think being a good research assistant can change over time. So when you first come into a lab, something that's really important is just to be really dependable. If the professor in charge of the lab asks you to do certain assignments or to be at certain meetings, make sure to communicate with them, respond to emails, come to meetings, and just be someone that they can start to give more responsibility to. Because over time, the longer you're in that lab, what being a really good research assistant looks like is someone who takes on more responsibility, someone that's able to do a lot of different tasks. Something that would be helpful for you as a student in that lab would be having experience in a lot of different areas, and that's something that you'll get to by being someone that professor trusts with a lot of different responsibilities. So just being proactive over time about asking for more responsibility and different types of tasks that you can be involved in, and taking advantage of any opportunity that they give you to do that.
Got it. So it sounds like you would probably recommend that students dedicate more time to one research lab as opposed to a little time to a bunch of research labs?
I would say start out in one lab and see how it goes, see if it's something that you become passionate about, that area. It definitely is a good idea to be in multiple research labs eventually, just so that you get a breadth of experience to kind of learn what you're interested in and to get to know several different professors. Everyone's lab is different, everyone's research is different. But I would say to not join too many labs right away until you're, have a good idea of what's expected of you in each lab, and make sure that you can definitely commit some time to that lab and, as I said, gain those responsibilities in that lab. So in my case, I have an application on my website for people who are interested in joining the lab.
Same. I do too.
Yeah, so a lot of faculty do that. So it's perfectly fine to email me, but I'll just direct you to that. So it's usually a good idea to check the person's website first and see if they have any information about how to join the lab. So yeah, in my case, you would fill out that application, and then if it's a semester that I have space for new research assistants, I would contact you, and we would get together and chat a little bit to see if you'd be a good fit for the lab and what your interests are like, and that'd be kind of how you go about it.